Okay, today is December 10th, Thursday. We're going to go through the lesson for that day. So you're going to go to your dashboard. You're going to click on your biology. You're going to click on current lessons on the home page. You're going to see your Google Meet links. You're going to see the schedule. You're going to see my help session. Just click on that link. It's from 10:30 to 11 each day except for Monday for homeroom. Here is your final exam schedule. You can click on that. It will get bigger for you to read. These assignments were due on these due dates, but I've extended the date till the 16th. After the 16th, all these assignments will close. Currently, if you have not done these assignments, you do have a 0 in Skyward. This week, I did not give anything that required you to do any points to earn other than bonus points, so there is no score other than if you did these. This is the study guide key. Click on that. You'll see the answers to the key. Here is a blank study guide for you to work out before checking the key. Here is the final exam schedule written out for you to view and make sure that you are attending the final at the right time. You must be present for the final. All right, so here is Thursday. We're going to talk about cell structure function. We have a few slides, and then cell transport. We will have 3 practice activities on Kahoot together. We will, and again, here is the study guide link, and here is the answer key. Again, we are going to have these practice. If you're not with us live, you will probably not be able to get into these because they are practiced together. Okay, so let's talk about what we have here. If you look here at the first slide, we have the cell, the smallest unit of life. We have 2 types of cells, the eukaryotic cell and the prokaryotic cell. Eukaryotic cells are multicellular. It's talking about something like our cells, something you can see with your eyes. They have a surrounding, they have a space in the cell that's a nucleus. Inside that nucleus is DNA. Prokaryotic cells are single-celled. They're only made up of 1 cell. So they're microscopic. We can't see them with our eyes. And they do not have that nice little space to be in with their DNA. Their DNA is just kind of loose in there like spaghetti. It's not encased inside a nucleus. You will need to know the organelles ribosomes and mitochondria. Remembering that ribosomes make proteins. Mitochondria is where we also have, this is the powerhouse of the cell. It's also where respiration takes place. We're going to talk about stem cells here in just a second. The plant and animal cell, some of the differences are that plants have chloroplasts. Inside those chloroplasts is a pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is what captures the sun's light and converts it into energy. Well, it's actually capturing the sun's light for food for the plant. And it's also what causes the plant to be green because it has pigment in it. They have large vacuoles. Those vacuoles are used for storage. They also allow the plant to have that rigid ability. So when you don't water your plant, you see how it flops over. Rigid is when it's strong and tough and has that, they don't have bones like we do. So they have these vacuoles to help them maintain their shape. And so does a cell wall, right? But the vacuole is used as storage. They can absorb liquids. They absorb water. Create food by photosynthesis. We just talked about that. So photosynthesis is taking in water, taking in carbon dioxide, using the sunlight, and then converting it to sugar and oxygen. The oxygen is used for us. It's also used in respiration. Remember, all cells respire. Plant cells, animal cells, any living cell is going to respire. That respiration takes place in the mitochondria. And that is how, respiration is how we take the food we've eaten and convert it into something we can use, which is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. And here's a picture of a cell for a plant. Here we have animal cells. They don't have a cell wall. We have a cell membrane, so does a plant underneath that cell wall. We have to consume our food. We can't just use the sun to make our food. We cannot absorb liquids. We'd be like SpongeBob if we did, wouldn't we? We can have a variety of shapes of cells. Notice the plant cells are all the same, whereas we have red blood cells, we have bone cells, we have skin cells. We have several different types of cells. They originate as stem cells, but they are able to specialize into different variety of shapes based upon what we need. We have lysosomes in our cells and animal cells. Lysosomes are the trash picker-uppers. They go around and pick up the dead parts of the cell or cells that are no longer functioning correctly. They're kind of the housekeeper. Cell differentiation. So every cell is a generic cell when it's made in the cell cycle. Once it's out of the cell cycle, it can either continue to make more of the same type of cell, which would be a generic cell, or they can differentiate. They can become specialized. Specialized means they turn into a specific type of cell, like a nerve cell or a bone cell or a blood cell or tissues, or there's various different things in our body they can turn into. Here's an example of a piece of tissue. This tissue picture is on the final exam, so be sure you know what this looks like. Tissues. We'll get to organization next. Stem cells, again, are generic when they start out. That's why they're being used in research, because stem cells are able to become anything you tell them to be. So they can either stay generic or they can turn into specialized cells. Here is a picture of neurons. Neurons are in your nervous system, and they are what communicate messages from your brain to wherever it needs to go. So for me able to speak, it's happening in my brain, but the message is being sent to my vocal cords to say what I want to say. So on a nerve cell, you have the dendrites up here that connect to these different branches at the bottom to each other. So you'll see here is a dendrite down here and a dendrite here. This little spot in the middle is a nucleus. This is the axon. These are myelin sheath. Myelin sheath allow for the message to be sent quickly down the axon to the next dendrite. They don't actually touch between here. There actually is a space, and that space releases chemicals to pass the message along. So what you need to know is how they connect to one another. Dendrites are going to connect to these branches to the next nerve cell. So the nerve cell has branches that allow it to communicate with other cells and send impulses. The two nerve cells connecting right here between here, but again, they're not quite touching, they just pass information along. Okay. Cellular organization. Now, cellular organization goes from simple to complex on this page, but on the exam, it's going to ask you to know it the opposite way. So just go up this way instead of down this way in your thoughts. Complex means something that's complicated. Simple is talking about just simple as it can be, right? So in cellular organization, you're talking about going from an atom, this is an atom, one single atom, to a molecule, which is many atoms, creating cells, which we have billions of cells, but we're going from an atom, which is one, to a molecule, which is many of atoms. Then we make a cell, which is a living organism, and hundreds of thousands of cells make tissues, and many tissues make an organ, and many organs make an organ system, and all of the organ systems make a human, or an organism, a living being. So again, we're over here, we see atoms, we see molecules, we see cellular level. So here we have simple, incredibly simple, to a little more complex, to the cellular level, which is even more complex. Then we have tissues, and those tissues, a bunch of tissues, make an organ, And many organs, like all these organs, make an organ system, and then every organ system makes an organism. And again, on the final exam, you will be asked to go backwards through this. So you're looking at being incredibly complex, the organism, to breaking it down to something simple like the organ systems, then down to the organ, then down to the tissue. You're just going backwards, down to the cell, down to the molecule, down to the atom. Here's a quiz that you can take to see how well you know that topic. Here's our last slide for today, talking about cell transport. Cell transport is something we just covered, so this shouldn't be too difficult. But there is a video here to help you remember. We're going to look at the cell membrane, which is made up of proteins and phospholipids. So here's the proteins and here's the phospholipid. Remembering that the head's like the water, the tail's like the fat. And then, but you need to know that this is the phospholipid part. That's why I have that nice big green arrow there. We need to talk about passive active transport. Remembering that passive transport does not require energy because it's going from high concentration to low concentration. Remember, we're talking about inside, outside the cell. So we have high concentration to low concentration. It's like going down the slide, a water slide. Active transport's talking about requiring energy, excuse me, requiring energy, which means that it's trying to go the opposite direction. It's trying to go up the water slide, then down, which requires energy. So let's talk about passive transport. There are 3 types. All of them are diffusion. So they're diffusing across the membrane without having to use any energy because they're going from high to low. Simple diffusion is moving any molecule across the membrane that can fit, because that's how you can pass the membrane. Osmosis is the movement of water across that membrane from high to low. I put a no next to it because you have to know this. This is on the final exam. Facilitated diffusion is talking about the proteins embedded in the inside the cell membrane, which allows facilitated diffusion. All it is a bigger opening to help push those molecules across. Active transport, because again, these are all going from high to low. Active transport requires energy, which means they're trying to go the opposite direction than where then would be easy to do. So kind of like, again, going up the water slide, then going down the water slide. So there are 3 types that we're going to talk about. Endocytosis is where endo means to come in, exo means to go out. So endocytosis is talking about the cell taking in something from the outside of the cell, engulfing it, which means surrounding it, and then bringing it into the cell. That requires energy. Then you have exocytosis, where it's inside the cell and the cell takes it, surrounds it, and then pushes it out of the cell. Again, remember I say you have to know this, so this is when you have to know for the final exam. Sodium potassium pumps are proteins embedded into the cell membrane, which help pump across, again, going from low to high, the sodium and potassium that is required in your body. That is it for the notes, and then we will play these Kahoots. You can work on your study guide when we're finished. You need to be sure you have that prepared and you understand you have 60 questions, 60 minutes, so you can't rely on your study guide as your end-all be-all. You need to be prepared to be able to answer those questions. Okay, have a great day.